All right, what is up, everybody? So, Shadow Scout 0013 here, coming in with Kylar.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about Vigilance and the leaders, which all of them are going to be mentioned today. Last time we left out a few of them because they're not as important to talk about, I feel like, is what we were trying to get across. Not that we're ignoring the fact that they have these leaders. We just wanted to kind of cut to the chase and get to what we feel is the best playable leaders. So, but today they all make the cut, and we'll have Kyler go ahead and start with Director Krennic.
Yeah, Director Krennic is just like Aiden, without skipping ahead, a control leader. As such, the ability to dictate the pace of the game is incredibly powerful, and control is a particularly common archetype. We did talk about the aggression leaders having a lot of aggro. This will be your counter to aggro, or counterpart to aggro is a better way to say it. Aggro tends to be a little bit better into control, but control also gives you the good pairing into the mid-range decks, and so it kind of creates that nice little like rock paper scissors. But in this game, we're seeing some pretty good success where control is starting to adapt and actually create openings. And Krennic and Iden are doing just that, and they're doing it very well. And even though they're control leaders, they're able to stave off that aggression, and no pun intended on the color red, but they're able to stave off the aggro and make plays which allow them to get you into that late game where they've got the game on lock, and then they can close it out for a victory. And the reason that they can do that is because both of them have healing. Krennic gives Restore 2, which is pretty handy. Iden will also give heals when things die. So Krennic and Iden, absolutely fantastic. If you're looking to play control, look no further. In the heroism category, we have Chewbacca, who is starting to pick up popularity. I think people were sleeping on him for a while, being that he comes out on 7. That is considered pretty slow for most accounts. But people are starting to warm up to the idea that if you are able to play a Sentinel every turn, it's pretty annoying for your opponent to have to chew through that. And if you create a deck that has a lot of stall, you get to the point where you're deploying him, and then he's an incredibly big wall that people have to get through, and a wall that only gets angrier, and that grit starts to take account. So Chewbacca's pretty darn good there as well. If we're talking about mid-range, we have Chirrut and we have Luke, who play in that nice, comfortable mid-range strategy. They tend to lean a little bit towards control, but they're definitely still not quite in that full control aspect because they're not going to be playing villainy, where villainy is going to have some of those removal cards that allow for them to be truly a control deck. But the heroism vigilance combo for Luke and for Chirrut allow for some really cool force centric leaders, and for your list to become a more mid range deck where it's a little bit slower than aggro, but it's definitely faster than control.
Nice. And then we do have an honorable mention of a base.
Yeah, Security Complex needs to get an honorable mention because we talked about in the aggression video that Grand Inquisitor has the ability to play blue with really, really decent success because of things like the bike. The Security Complex allows you to shield your unit. So on turn 1, if you play a bike, you are able to play the bike, damage it for 2, untap it because of Grand Inquisitor's ability, and then shield it with the Security Complex and attack. That is a pretty great start to an aggressive list because now you have a 3 power, effectively hasted unit that if your opponent doesn't trade into it on the following turn and break the shield, you can attack with it, use Grand Inquisitor's ability, hits the shield, untap it again, and then hit. So that's effectively, if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it, that's 9 damage that one unit will do, but on turn, or by the second turn of the game. So Security Complex gets an honorable mention because of the slight combo play that you can play with Grand Inquisitor.
Nice. And then, so first up, we're going to talk about the Vigilance villainy. And we'll start with the Inferno 4.
All right. So Inferno 4 is a unique spaceship, 2/3, pretty standard stat lines for a 2-cost card. The important part is that its trigger is when played and defeated, and it allows you to, if for the Magic the Gathering players out there, effectively scry 2. You look at the top 2 cards, put them back in any order, or on the bottom in any order. So fixing the top of your deck early game is critical, right? Your opening hand, you've done the best with the opening 6 that you can get, but being able to play that first turn card and kind of just say, okay, I don't want to get screwed over on turn 2, and potentially if you've played after your opponent and seen what they've played, it allows you to look at the top of your deck and maybe find some answers. So fixing the top of your deck is always a great way to start a game. So it definitely belongs on the list. The next card is the Death Trooper. So what goes really well after a Inferno? Well, a Death Trooper. Because the Death Trooper is able to clear out a lot of pesky turn 1 plays. And yes, he takes 2 damage to one of your own ground units, which would be himself if you have no other targets. The ability to react and deal damage right off the rip when you play that card is incredibly good. So if your opponent has like a Viper Probe droid and they took a peek at your hand and then you play this guy, well, there's a dead Viper Probe droid, right? Did not survive. Greedo doesn't survive. There's a lot of 2 health units. Storm, when we talked about aggression, we talked about the Stormtrooper. 1 health, right? Death Trooper can come out, pop, get rid of him. It gives you a nice tempo swing. And then other times, depending on what base you're playing, if you're playing let's say the red base, being able to damage a unit, like let's say they had a Boba Fett in play that they played, you play Death Trooper, 2 damage to Boba Fett, now he's damaged, use your aggression base as epic action, 3 damage to a damaged unit, that kills Boba Fett. That amount of tempo swing could change the entire game for you.
Nice. That's a good combo.
Very good combo. So Iden Red is going to be playing potentially that combo, as well as other leaders. Like if you were going to try to play Vader Vigilance with the Vigilance space, you probably you're definitely going to be able to use some stormtroopers, and then you get the ping from Darth Vader as well. So that 2 damage can start to be a little scarier, right? When you start thinking about other ways where you can add just a little bit more reach, right? So the red base or like Darth Vader leader, those types of things are what you're going to be looking for.
Nice.
The next card we're talking about is Gideon. Um, Gideon is definitely growing in popularity. I think more and more. Every time you look at lists, you're going to start seeing him pop up more often. He's especially good in green if you're using the green base, because the ability to ambush and kill something and then immediately grab that experience token is quite good. You could give it to one of your other units, or you could give it to your leader. You could also give it to himself if that would keep him safe, which is also super relevant. If you're attacking into something and he gets the experience token and now it brings him out of reach of that, ping from Darth Vader or from something. Now you're putting your opponent into a situation where they needed 2 for 1. So Gideon Hask is definitely looking pretty good. Speaking of 2 for 1s, that is the Avenger. This is the mega late game. This is why Iden and Krennic are a nuisance. They are the control masters because of this card. This card is disgusting. Yes, it costs 9, but it is worth 9. The card's text says when played and on attack, an opponent chooses a non-leader unit they control, defeat that unit. Boy, it is just oppressively good. The ability to just power of the it's effectively it's pretty close to the same text of Power of the Dark Side, which, spoiler, is the next card that we're going to look at. The only stipulation is that it doesn't kill leaders on its attack, but boy, that really doesn't feel like it's much of a consolation.
Now, do you
So
think you
the
can get
Avenger
up?
is definitely. Hmm?
a good. Do you think you can get up to 9 pretty quickly though with an Iden or Krennic control deck or command deck?
Yeah, they're typically going to run resupply and super laser technician in the green versions of the deck, which will help them ramp to that point. But to be fair, even if they're playing the red versions, getting to 9 is pretty much a certainty because everything that they do in the deck is to just kill your board over and over and over again and then make favorable trades. And they're going to push the game into that late game and then they want to get you in lockdown. And this card really, really hammers home that lockdown.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, so speaking of Power of the Dark Side effects, well, let's look at Power of the Dark Side itself. So, 3 cost event that defeats a unit of your opponent's choice. Well, oftentimes when they only have 1 unit in play, it basically just says defeat that unit. So this is just straight up kill anything you want for 3. Yes, against super aggressive decks, it is not going to give you the effect that you want every single time. That's fine. It's genuinely fine. You're the number of times where you're able to use another removal towards the end of the game and clear out the problematic card and then just use this card to clean up the thing that's remaining. It's just like the Avenger. And if you have Avenger in play and you swing and then they sack something and then you power the dark side and then they sack the only other thing that they had in play, it's really great for cleaning up the board and allowing you to stay uh, dominating.
Nice.
Moving on to heroism, though. First up is Kanan. Kanan is a great card because he heals you. No matter what, he's at least healing you for 1 on attack because it's uh, 1 for each aspect on the card that they milled, and he is a Spectre, so he's always going to at least have them mill or discard, I should say, discard 1 from the top of their deck. So the ability to heal is always great. So you can almost consider him as having restore, but slightly better than restore because you're taking the top card off of your opponent's deck. There are some obvious synergies there with things like Inferno 4. If you had just killed an Inferno 4 and your opponent took 1 card and put it on the bottom and then they put 1 card on top and then all of a sudden you go, "Oh, attack with Kanan." Well, that card that they kept on top of their deck is now in their discard pile. So
Oof.
it's yeah, so there's definitely some times where that's going to be pretty good. The other time that's going to happen is for a cause I believe in, which is another card that can fix the top of the deck, where you get to kind of manipulate that. So discarding cards, even if it's just 1, is awesome. Yeah, you're probably not going to be playing him in a Spectre theme deck very often. You can. I think if you are going to see him next to another Spectre, it's probably going to be Ezra or Sabine, depending on which colors you're in, unless you're playing an actual Spectre deck. But that would be just for fun. I don't think that that's particularly competitive, unless somebody has found the secret sauce that I haven't seen yet. Um, so the next card to talk about is another staple. It comes out of the starter deck. Everybody should have an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Force 6 Sentinel, gives experience when he dies, and then if it's a Force unit, you draw a card so he replaces himself. Boy, it this is such a great card because it's just straight out of the movie. If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can imagine. Like the whole the fact that he does good things after he dies is just so cool, and that he's Sentinel, so he's protecting Luke, as Luke tries to escape the Death Star. Like this is just such a great thematic card. I can't believe that they were able to pack so much movie theme into the card text, and yet do it in a way that doesn't make the card feel oppressive or anything, or overpowered. Just definitely it just hits it right in that perfect area of competitive, good, thematic, but not broken. So
Oh yeah,
Obi-Wan definitely makes the list.
he's nice.
And speaking of Luke's, there he is. Comes out the next turn. Luke Skywalker himself. So as opposed to the leader who is handing out shield tokens, this Luke is the Jedi Knight version of Luke, who is restoring health on attack, but more importantly, the ability to negative X, right? Either 3 or 6, depending on whether a unit has been defeated this phase, a friendly unit. But the important part is that our Magic the Gathering friends will know that when a creature's health ever becomes 0, or if the damage and the health are ever the same, the card dies. So by negative threeing the health of a card, even temporarily, it can actually kill things, which is incredibly powerful. And the reason why it's so powerful is because it gets around effects like shields. Something can be shielded, but you can make their health 0, and when their health becomes 0, they die anyway, right?
Wow.
Even through the shield. So
Yeah, I
this is a
thought that.
crazy, crazy good card.
See, I thought it just gave it like a 0/0 and it stayed on the board, and then when you attacked it, nothing happened. But you're saying it actually like give an enemy unit -3/3, and then if it hits 0, then it actually gets off the board.
Yeah, if you had a theoretical 5/5 creature or unit, I should say, in play, and you gave it 2 damage from attacking it with some unit, doesn't matter, right? And it has 2 damage counters. Whether your unit died or not, okay? When you give it -3, its health becomes 2, right? Because it now becomes from a 5/5, it's now a 2/2 creature. And the rules state that when the remaining health of a unit is 0, then it's dead. So that 2 damage that's already on the card now is equal to the 2 health that it has. Its remaining HP is 0, and so it dies. So yes, negatives can kill it. And then with the same logic, this has already been talked about on the forums. If a unit has 0 damage on it and its health is 0, 0 damage equals 0 health, it dies, right? Because 0 is the remain. So the way that you should think about it is when the remaining health of the unit is 0, it's dead. Okay? And so
Okay.
0 minus 0 equals 0. Well, great, we can all do math, right? So 0 remaining HP, dead.
Defeated.
So
Nice.
this guy's super 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 good. Um, if the more times you play blue white, you'll probably throw this into just about every single deck. It is also Luke Skywalker, so I mean like there's that for it as
Oh
well.
yeah, that's nice. He's yeah.
So
I need to get me a
how
few
do
of
we
them.
keep Luke around longer? Well, the next card, Redemption. The ability to drop a Sentinel in space that can heal units and or your base. And yeah, the damage gets transferred over to the Redemption, but let's face it, if you were trying to kill my Luke and you put 4 damage on him and I just moved it over to the space lane, that's going to feel pretty awful for you.
Oh yeah.
Also, the ability to just drop a blocker in space that can soak up most attacks. It'll kill a Fett's Fire Spray, but it'll also heal your base for 8. Anecdotally, I'm going to tell everybody that when I was playing my Luke deck against Boba Fett, the meta Boba Fett deck, in my very last game that I played, my base was up to 24 damage. I was playing ECL, so it was about to die. I had 1 health remaining on my base. I ended the game due to Redemption. I ended the game with Redemption and Luke with 9 health or 9 damage on my base. I was able to not only stave off the aggression that was in play, but I was actually able to out heal it and bring myself all the way back down to the single digits. This card is incredible.
Jeez.
Part of the way that you're going to do that, of course, is that if they don't want to attack the Redemption, then you can play other cards that can return it to your hand.
Mm.
There's a spaceship that is a 2/6 Sentinel in green called I think it's Bright Hope. It has the ability to return. You can return one of your units to your hand, and if you do, draw a card. So you can Bright Hope. You still have that Sentinel up there. You get the Redemption back. You play it again, heal another. So you're effectively going to heal 16 from that alone. Or like I said, just healing Luke, keeping him around longer. That Restore 3 stays online longer. It's very good. Very very
Wow.
very good. So
Okay.
definitely it is this is why blue is indeed vigilant. It keeps you alive. And speaking of keeping Luke's alive, the next card and last card to talk about is Luke's lightsaber. So if you're going to play Luke as your leader, this card is a staple. It's awesome. Only for only 2, it gives him +3/+1. So he goes from a 4/7 to a 7/8, which is big stats. At 7/8, he can one shot a Boba Fett, right? So that's why it's relevant, right? Seven attack is really important number. It does kill a lot of very important units. The other thing that's important is the fact that when played on Luke Skywalker, which does not check subtext, mind you, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it heals it to full and gives him a shield all in one go. That does mean that if you are playing Luke as your leader and you're playing Luke Skywalker's in the deck itself, if your Luke leader finally winds up getting killed, you can play future copies of Luke's lightsaber on Luke Skywalker, the unit card, and still heal and shield him just as well.
That's so good.
It's very good. So
I'm
yeah,
surprised.
definitely love this card.
Yeah, I'm surprised we're not seeing more Luke decks out there. I know that
Yeah,
you've
I
got
think
your
that
favorite
the
one.
reason is I have my favorite deck right now, which is a Luke Skywalker deck. I'm gonna play it whether it's meta or not, and I definitely run 3 of these in it. I think that this is a fantastic lightsaber, and playing it on curve, like right into Luke Skywalker, is just it just feels so satisfying. You play Luke, they attack it, then you heal him, and you heal him to full, and you shield him. Most removal can't deal with Luke right away because it either says non-unit leader on it, like what we talked about in our green video with Rook. He doesn't KO leaders, so or Vanquish does not kill unit leaders. So the things that can just immediately deal with a unit don't apply to the leader, and so you have to have your opponent attack in. And if they don't have 7 attack in one go, ready to go. I mean, I've even seen people have a Boba Fett out. They played Overwhelming Barrage on Boba, buffed him up to a 6 power, used the Overwhelming Barrage to deal all 6 damage to Luke, but that's just one shy to kill him, and then I play the lightsaber and bring him back to full health with a shield, and then they feel super, super sad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oof.
Anyway, moving on, let's
Yeah.
talk about the only double blue card that's going to be mentioned, and that's Vigilance. So, Vigilance is an incredible card. It is probably the best of all the double aspects. Okay, I say that with a grain of salt. I think Cunning, we haven't talked about Cunning yet. Cunning is probably number 1, Vigilance is number 2, and I think the difference between number 2 and 3 is definitely like a whole tier, like skip a tier. So if 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 Cunning is A plus and this is A minus, the next highest one they wouldn't even be in the B tier. These are head and shoulders to me above the other ones. It's no question.
Hmm.
So until we see some more double aspect cards to make maybe the other colors more appealing, I think blue is the only one that can afford to go into blue and cunning. So, excuse me, vigilance and cunning are the only ones that can afford to go double aspect, and so for that reason, it makes it onto my list of cards that we should talk about. The most common thing you're going to do with it, of course, is going to be the defeat a unit with 3 or less remaining HP, and then give a shield token. Those are going to be very stapled to it. But the ability to get yourself out of reach of danger against hyper aggressive decks, killing a guy and then healing 5 off of your base, is just really, really strong. And then there is a world where if you're in a control mirror, milling, or rather I should say discarding, which is mill from Magic, discarding 6 cards from an opponent's deck can actually be a valid strategy for winning the game, because when you run out of cards in your deck, you take 3 damage for every card that you couldn't draw. So if you can just get the game to go long enough and you play, let's say, 3 copies of Vigilance on them and they mill 18 cards out of their deck, there is
Oof.
a world where you just win because they don't have any cards left.
Nice.
Although that is right now, that's not a valid strategy. I'm just saying, like, we got to keep an eye on it, right? And we did talk about Kanan, who mills one. And there's a couple other ways to do it in the game, so definitely Vigilance is worth keeping an eye on. Moving on to the next mono blue card, Regional Governor. Great sideboard card. Some decks can run it in the main board in some capacity, but this is definitely one of those cards that for control is going to look better and better. Name a card. While this unit is in play, opponents can't play the name card. Yeah, there's some problems with the whole name a card thing from other card games. This card game has made it fairly clear that you don't need to know the subtext of a card. It applies to the card as a whole. Right now, there aren't any examples of this, but if they, in future sets, printed more copies of, let's say, Agent Callus, and there becomes maybe a heroism version of Agent Callus, you would be able to get all copies of Agent Callus because it checks the name. Or we looked at Gideon Hask, same example there. You name Gideon Hask, it's just checking the header name. So this is a pretty good card. Luke Skywalker, Leia, all these popular cards. As we get more and more sets, I think this card's going to become even better. But even right now, it's good. You could just say, hey, I'm going to name Power of the Dark Side. And then all of a sudden your opponent's like, wow, I really hate the fact that I kept this opening hand with Power of the Dark Side in it, right? So there's just going to be some games where like naming a card is just really, really disruptive to your opponent. And also, this is not a unique card. You can have 2, 3 regional governors out at the same time, locking down multiple cards, which effectively can stop your opponent from even being able to play the best lines of play that they draw into. So regional
Yeah,
governor, really good.
and I think pairing the regional governor with even the probe droid and or Thrawn and or is it the Chimera as well, that allow
Thrawn,
you to.
yeah, Thrawn definitely looks at the top of the deck. You can, I mean, if you just wanted to snipe a card out of their hand, at least you'll know that you hit a card. So there's definitely some ways to peek and cheat. So yeah, 100%. Regional governor is definitely something that people need to be aware of, and it is a good counter, especially from the control decks that aren't trying to rush your opponent down. It has 1/4 stats, means it stays around for a while.
Oh yeah.
Moving to the next card, System Patrol Craft. I had to throw it on the list because, gosh dang it, this thing's annoying. It's annoying. It's a Sentinel in space. Ugh, how annoying. The space lane is supposed to be the aggressive lane. It doesn't die to the TIE Advance when comes out and deals 3 damage, and that's super super relevant. So on the same turn that you can play a TIE Advance, the System Patrol Craft can come out and survive that hit, which is really really great. It survives multiple attacks from things like A-wings and trades into those because the 3 attack that this thing has kills that A-wing. If they, assuming that the A-wing isn't buffed by any other effects, if it's just swinging in. So System Patrol Craft, great for staving off aggro, definitely worth a mention.
Nice.
And the first event that we're going to talk about that's mono blue is Make an Opening. The more I have played with this in my sideboard, the more and more I think that it's just so underhyped. It's a common card. It looks bad, but we talked about that what -2/-2 does, or that -X effect, from Luke. Well, here's another card that's doing that, and it also heals from the base.
Yeah,
In
it
the
seems like a pretty
worst,
nice.
in the worst world, if you're healing the 2 off of your base and you're preventing 2 damage from an attacking unit, this card is effectively going to heal you for 4, right? The way that you can kind of think of it that way. But in the best worlds, if your opponent plays, let's say, a 7th Fleet Defender, or is it 7th Fleet? Oh boy.
Yeah, I think it's
No,
seven.
is it Defender? I apologize. Yeah, 7th Fleet Defender. It's a 3/2 shielded in space, right? And you just say, hey, how about it has 0 health? Oh, it died. Whoop, bye. Right, so there's going to be certain cards that this thing just absolutely just takes care of. Your Crafty Smuggler is another example, 2/2 shielded. So getting around shielded is just going to be super super great. And oftentimes you'll see a card hanging out with a little bit of health left on it, and because the opponent did a favorable trade, and then boom, you just finish it off. And the fact that it heals just makes it the cherry on top.
Nice. And
Speaking of finishing off cards, the next card to talk about is Takedown. With an honorable mention of Vanquish, I guess you can kind of show that. Vanquish says defeat a non-leader unit. It's very, very plain text. But it costs 5, and it doesn't kill leaders. So it only gets the honorable mention. The one that we're going to talk about is Takedown. It costs 1 less, and it defeats a unit, which can include leaders, with 5 or less remaining HP. And remember how we talked about remaining HP? So even if a unit is full health, this can kill it, right? As long as the 5 remaining HP, right, which is health minus damage on the unit, that's the remaining. So Boba Fett, right, the unit card,
yeah.
dies. 3/5, dead. Kanan
Uh,
Jarrus, He was on my list. He's a 4/5. Nope, sorry, dead. Yoda, dead. Right?
Mm.
Gideon Hask, sorry, Gideon, bye. You're a 5/5. The unit leader that we were talking about at the beginning of the video, Iden, sorry, she's a 4/4 shielded. She just dies. She just takedown from full.
Oof.
Get her out of here. Sabine, super aggro extraordinaire. Sabine, 2/5 from full health. Takedown. Sorry. Bye, Sabine. So, takedown, really well positioned. 5 is just such a magical number. It hits so many things, so many good things. So uh, definitely my favorite card in Vigilance right now.
Nice. Yeah, I like
And
it.
that is the last card on the list.
Well, that was a very good overview of Vigilance. And yeah, man, thanks for joining up and for talking about this.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. And we'll see you in the next video.